This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room, Matt. It's a pleasure to have you here. Jason and I love meeting a new CEO because we just know we're going to learn something. It's impossible to be a CEO for any amount of time and not have at least one war story that you're like, look, here's what it is. Mm-hmm. And the way we usually build up to that is by asking, do you yourself come from a family of entrepreneurs, or what was it like growing up? What kind of work life did you have as an example in your life growing up?
Yeah. So my father was an entrepreneur. He basically started this, I guess, a country craft line, if you will. So I can remember being a kid and he'd have stacks and stacks of lumber in the garage, and I'd, climb on this, and he would take that lumber and turn it into, different figurines. And that did pretty well. They had a number of different accounts, and one of those accounts was in JCPenney's. And again, as a kid, I remember going with him to various stores, close to us, and they'd set up the displays and JCPenney's and all that. And I didn't think anything of it, but that's something that not very many people get to experience, growing up in a situation like that. So yeah, very entrepreneurial, very, we always have tried to do things our own way and figure out things, how to make things work and make things happen, as we go. So.
And so how did that inform the decisions you make as you start to build out this idea of a professional life? As it's a growing pain. We all have to go through it at some point. Early teens for some, early childhood for those who had the lemonade stands, to all the way to, okay, I'm in college. What am I going to do after this? So where does that occur for you?
So I would say that occurred very, very young for me. So again, we started, doing things on our own homes, helping family members and all of that. I was putting roofs on houses when I was, 9, 10 years old, something like that. And by the time I was 16, I pretty well knew how to do everything. Right. And, we had intentions of starting to get into home investing and buying and flipping again. This was after my father had gotten out of the country craft business. This was kind of the next evolution. And unfortunately, when I was 16, my father passed away. He drowned in Cape Hatteras. So that transformation, like that whole, area of my life, again, I like to try to take the positive from anything that I possibly can. Right. So before that point, I was very reserved, very worried about what everyone else thought about me, didn't speak out, didn't have all that to really many friends. I can remember standing in front of the closet and thinking like, oh, the last time I wore that shirt, that was a good day. So I'm going to wear that shirt again, and I'm going to have another good day today. Right. Like that was kind of my mentality. And after my father passed away, I was like, screw it. Life is too short to worry about what people, think about you and that. So I really came out of my shell. And now, people are like, you can talk to anyone like that. How do you do that? How can you walk into a place and just, strike up a conversation with people? So, that whole time, again, we never got to purchase houses together or anything like that. So I started going down that same path after I graduated high school. So I never went to college or anything. After high school, I joined a electrical contractor as an apprentice and started going down the road of learning electrical contracting. Bought my first house when I was 19 and fixed it up and flipped it, and then started an electrical contracting company when I was 21 or so. And then still went through and did the whole house flipping thing, while we had the electrical contracting company. So that's kind of, how I got into entrepreneurialism myself. And I haven't worked for anyone, quote unquote, worked for anyone, had a W-2 job in 25 years now or so. So lots of trials and tribulations along the way, but, still here to talk about it. So.
I mean, yeah, man, this is the classic story. There's a lot to be learned from this. And before I go into it, I want to let Jason talk about it because I know he's resonating with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. It really is the story of born out of adversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the sheer will to want to succeed. There was a huge shift and change, and that shift, I don't like to use the word defined you, but it assisted in your growth, right?
Yeah.
And it was an instant growth moment because it was like, I either man up and grow hair on my chest, or I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
One of those deals. So
yeah. And he was my best friend, up until obviously he passed away, he was the person, again, I'd spend all weekend with him, again, working on the houses, doing things. That's what I like to do. I like doing those types of things. And then, obviously he was gone. So I was like, okay, now, and again, looking back, I didn't realize this for many, many years, but looking back, that's what I can say, that was like a positive influence or a positive thing that I can take from that point in time or that point in my life, and really change the trajectory of things. So
no, it's powerful stuff. I was editing an episode for a client, and he had interviewed Matthew McConaughey, and the very similar story where his dad was like his best friend. That's where he learned how to tell stories. And I lost my father in 2015, and it's just one of those things where for me, it's like, it's a defining moment, right? It's a catalyst for a lot of things as an individual, right? It's really where you begin to shape some pretty like defined lines and how it's going to be from that point forward. And to hear that you carried on and did the things you had plans to do anyways, I mean, come on, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And from what I see in my notes here, Matt, you're crushing it with Virtue Ventures, real estate investing, property management, construction company. And if we think about it, you like worked for like 2 years and then just started your own company doing
pretty much
that, just moving quick. If there's anything that indicates you're an entrepreneur, is moving quickly. And that's something even myself, I struggle with a lot, but it didn't seem like you hesitated. What do you contribute that lack of hesitation to, even so early on in your life?
I feel like this is something that you just have to trust in yourself and trust that you're going to be able to do it. And I feel like, again, I've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs as well, and everyone has this thing, like they're just going to go out and make this thing happen. And then there's the other side of that fence where people sit and think about these things and try to, now is the right time, or is everything perfect and everything aligned? You're never going to have the perfect time. Everything's not going to be perfectly aligned all over, all the time. You just got to get out and, start making it happen. So, one of the things I learned early on, and again, fortunately, I started, kind of in this industry very, very young, again, putting on roofs when I was, 10 years old. Always try to build on your background, build on the things that and are familiar with, because these people that are kind of jumping around like, like if I went and did an Amazon store right now, like, obviously there's a lot of people that make Amazon stores and make a tremendous amount of money at it, but that's not like, I don't know, that's not necessarily my background. Like, I don't know how to make an Amazon store. So like, there's all these shiny objects, and you have to kind of filter through everything and pick out the things that, are applicable to you and the things that you can grab onto, and not necessarily say, oh, I'm going to go and do this and try this and do this. That's where you kind of run into the issues. But if you have that background and that support, you're going to be much more confident moving forward through whatever that thing is that you're trying to accomplish. So I guess, again, to kind of answer your question, it was that background, knowing that, I knew how to do all of this stuff, and that sort of was the catalyst to be able to get everything going. And one thing led to another, and it just, kind of starts snowballing after a while. So
you bring up such a valid point. I
always say three.
Go for it.
3, maybe 4 at the most. I love I've built all my companies around, you got to have the right superpowers, right? And in life, there, you can't have any more than 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It's impossible, right? Well, it's not impossible if you're a savant or something, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, just the normal dudes right now having conversations right now, we got 3, maybe 4 things that we are like kick ass at doing, right? And after that, it's a stretch.
Yeah, exactly. And you can
So
stretch and you can learn into it,
yeah,
but you know,
absolutely.
again, like you were saying, just focus on those, 3, 4 things, and you'll be much better off. So,
Yeah.
And it's true, especially one time that it really became apparent to me. I think I had been given the opportunity to teach a class in Scrum product owner roles, and I was teaching the class, but I had just recently received the certification to do that anyways. And I'm teaching all these people that work at Microsoft, IBM, this and that, through a friend who brought me in on it. And as I'm teaching them, because I understand the marketing, all the things I told them literally what you just said. I said, this class was designed in a way so that you can go back on what you accomplished from the beginning to build on what's next. And yet nobody did it. Every time there was a new exercise, they started from scratch again, as if they hadn't done something before. Yeah. And for some reason, I have that same blind spot in a lot of areas in my life, but hearing you say what you said, and Jason corroborating that, it really is true. You just have to look at what you've done and say, I'm going to do more of this and better every single step of the way. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's that's the exact key. And obviously, again, you want to take steps forward. So maybe there's a little bit difference. Like I used to buy houses and duplexes and triplexes, and that's graduated into multifamily apartments now at this point. So there's always more to learn and more to expand, but still all of that background and construction and understanding how everything is put together and all of that, it's still all there, but it's just kind of the next step up from that. So
I love it. So you do that, and then you start a show. Okay, now we don't often get a chance to talk to other podcast hosts on the show. We've come across a few, but you're doing really well. We firsthand know what it takes to get even to the top 3%, which is what you said. So why don't you tell me about how you saw podcasting fitting into your overall scheme and business?
Yeah. So I started the podcast in 2020 during COVID. I think it was April of 2020, if I remember correctly. And I had thought of doing a podcast for many, many years, right? And I mean, to be quite honest with you, at first I didn't really understand how it was going to necessarily fit in. But again, I like to talk to everyone. I like to connect with everyone, and entrepreneurs are like my people, right? Like that's who I always seem to connect the most with, right? Other people that are getting out there and making change happen and figuring things out as they go. Like that's what I like, to be able to communicate with those people, help them, interact with them, so I figured, okay, let's I can't go and have any like meetups or anything like that, so let's do the podcast now. And that's what it originally was. That was the original thought behind it, was to just basically create it so that I could connect with other entrepreneurs. But then I started realizing that, in all of our companies, there's always issues, there's always questions, there's always things that, we're struggling with, like, how do we do this? How do we, how does this work? And fortunately, I have a team behind me as well at this point. So we have people that have certain skill sets, but we're still kind of lacking. And, through the podcast, like I tell everybody this, I swear a podcast is, again, I've been selling things for many, many years, but a podcast like breaks through so many of the roadblocks, so many of the barriers of being able to get in touch with the right type of people. And what we basically do is we say, I want you on my podcast, right? So we're very, very upfront. That's the subject line. And again, you think from a person who might not necessarily normally be getting that type of attention. Like, you're reaching out to another entrepreneur, someone who's well known in their industry, who's crushing it in their business. Someone else is reaching out to you to sort of give you accolades and recognition for your achievements and accomplishments, right? So right away, like it kind of breaks down that barrier of their apprehension of talking to you and speaking to you. So I was able to get in touch with some really, really amazing entrepreneurs who were doing amazing things. And then I started solving, some of the questions that our own internal company had, right? Like how, SEO questions and some of the developers and all of that. I just say, okay, let's try to reach out to, a top expert in that field and then, get our own questions answered. And obviously other entrepreneurs, other business owners were struggling with the exact same thing. And not knowing how to, again, pick the subject, not knowing, the right way to do SEO today and, go and reach out to one of the top SEO companies in the country and, get the answers from the people who know what's going on. And, again, so it's kind of turned into our own way to be able to, reach out to these experts, get our own questions answers, connect with these amazing individuals, which now we've got, a network of 200 plus very successful entrepreneurs and, cross, connecting them together. This person has this question, I know this other person top in their field, connect them together. And then, there's a relationship formed there that we've, introduced them to, which then, we've seen that connection pay off in dividends in all kinds of different ways, other connections, other business opportunities, other, relationships that have spun off of that. So again, it's all about coming together, connecting people together. At least that's the way that I'm doing it, but connecting people together and, telling their life story, getting their knowledge and, sharing that with everyone. So I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of feel like I rambled on there a little bit,
No. You definitely did more than that. And that's why you have a top 3% show, because it's very clear, even though you started it with because everyone starts it with something in mind, but as entrepreneurs do, as it takes on a life of its own, we go, wait a minute, this could be something greater. And it's now a resource is what it sounds like in a community. And that's why it's succeeding, because it's grown beyond just whatever you originally thought was just for you and what have you. Now it's something that takes on a life of its own. And I'm really happy to hear that. Our show has had a very similar experience. So for me, that's exciting. And I'm going to take a listen and see what I can pick up from Past the Secret Sauce.
There you go.
That's a great name for a show.
I tell a lot of people this. I actually took a course by Seth Godin for it was called, and I think it's still around, but it's called the Podcast Fellowship. So really, really cool. Great way that they put everyone together. And essentially you have a cohort of people that are going through the exact same process you are. What is my name going to be? And what's it going to be about? And you're kind of bouncing all these ideas off of each other. And that's really where, Past the Secret Sauce came out of, kind of that networking with other people that were trying to name their own podcasts too. So it's, cool way to be able to, start off a new program like this, learning from Seth Godin, so.
I mean, all MBA program is also amazing.
Exactly.
No, I've followed Seth Godin for a while now, definitely some good stuff. And I heard about that fellowship, and that's exciting. Before we go any further, I want to check in with Jason, just to make sure. And then I want to go into the latter half of the show here. Jason?
Yeah. It's interesting how we as like business owners, and we can be really multifaceted, right? We have the opportunity to be that. And, it's neat because you're in like my favorite world, and that's the trades. I love the trades. I cut my teeth in the trades too. And I grew up on a farm, so it was like either fix it or it's just going to stay broke. Right? So it's not like there was a general contractor that was going to show up and fix it. So it was like you either fixed it or the sheep got out.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
The roof was leaking. If you didn't know how to fix it, well, dad would hand you a gallon of tar and say, get up there and just throw it everywhere. Find out where it is. Right. So there's something to be said about that, in how those kind of upbringings lead into entrepreneurship. Phillips did 2,000 plus of these. I'm on close to 400 now, but it's the one thing that I've really connected the dots between talking to people, is that same backstory is very similar. The narrative's a bit different, but the lines all connect the same way. And it's an amazing thing. It's almost like business owners are it's like its own breed, really.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I'd say, if you're looking to have your kids be business owners, right? Like, give them those challenges early on. Like, don't solve everything for them. Let them figure things out, and throw them into a situation, like you said, like, how am I going to fix the roof? Okay, here it is. Let them go do it, right? And
Yeah.
you learn so much from those situations where you kind of jump in and figure things out, in those different ways. So.
What I love about this is, if there's anything I've learned in the 2000 conversations I've had that I'm beginning to see fairly recently is, and it's crazy because not all of them have been podcast hosts, right? A few of them have, but a lot of them have also just been straight up entrepreneurs, CEOs, venture capitalists. And if there's anything I could say is true after all that, there's room for whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is you're thinking of doing in business, there's actually room. There is. And it took me 2,000 conversations. That's enough data for me to finally be convinced that, there's room. And some have done a lot more with a lot less. It didn't take them 2,000 connections to figure that out. I mean, just look at yourself. You specifically, I mean, Matt, you from the jump just knew what you were going to do. And I have this moment with almost everyone I talk to at some point in our interactions. I go, because I'm one of those people who want to be an entertainer and this and that or what have you. And I kind of flit and flee and check something out, shiny object syndrome, if you will. And I was like, I tend to excel at something that I focus on. Right. Mm-hmm. And I use that as a reason to go, I don't know, there's so many things I could do. When, like Jason said, there's like 3 tops, 4 maybe. Right. Mm-hmm. And then there are the people who go, I was never really good at anything else, didn't bother trying to get good at anything else because I knew this was the thing I could do really well.
Yeah.
And that is such a different path to take. And I think it's a healthier one because you can invest more and do greater, right? You can build vertically that way.
Yeah.
And it's such a great reminder. And you're a great example of that.
Yeah. Along those lines, what we started doing relatively recently is creating load lists for our groups. And I'll just make this really quick, but I feel like there's something here too, where, you can start documenting what it is that you're doing and understanding these are the things that I'm doing over and over and over again. And these are the things that seem to be, working really well. So, if you're kind of in a moment in your life where you don't necessarily know what, you're good at or what it is that you want to concentrate on or know what it is that you want to do, maybe take some time to put together what's, called a load list. And it quite literally is just a list of everything that you're doing on a daily basis. And not necessarily like I called this person, right? Like, that's not necessarily the point, but you're going through reconciling books or something like that, right? So maybe you're more in tune with numbers and accounting and all of that. And, you'll start to see patterns in those where, these are the things that, I'm doing over and over and over again, or I seem to gravitate toward this. And pick out those things that you're good at or things that you enjoy doing. And there might be some hidden gems in there that you might be able to, start a company, start a business, start something that you might be more inclined to do rather than reaching out to this shiny object and that's not shiny object. And, just again, look back in what your background is. So if that makes sense.
I'm digging this conversation, man, because it's true. I'll catch myself for fun creating like project management templates that I never even go back to use. It was the act of creating them that was more. It's crazy. I don't even know why I do it. I'll come up with an idea. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting way to manage something. But then if I manage my own things, forget about it. Yeah. But I love creating it. So it's a valid point. If you catch yourself doing anything interesting or curious like that, it's worth taking a deeper look at. I'm going to do that. With that said, we've reached the latter half of this. So I want to take a quick break just to give a shout out to Shelby Joe Long with Rogue Publishing Partners and everyone there that's involved. Essentially, they can offer you the whole turnkey solution. If you're an expert in your industry, you're an executive, a coach, a trainer, whatever it is, and you want to write and publish and market books, You can either try to figure it out yourself, put a ragtag team together, or get a team that already has the battle scars and has shown that they can do that for you, right? Your choice. The 3 choices make it really easy. One of them is optimal, obviously, and they've designed their methods to get you that traction. So if that's something you're into and you're listening to this, go to roguepublishingpartners.com. Again, that's Rogue, ROGUE, publishingpartners.com. Let them know the War Room sent you, and they'll roll out the red carpet for you. The same token, Matt, if people want to get a hold of you after what they've heard, which I'm sure they will, this is the moment to let them know where to connect with you and what your own call to action is.
Yeah. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Normally that's probably the best way to be able to reach out and get in touch with me. So it's just Matthew Shields, just search for that. And my pearly whites, my smiling face is right there. So yeah, that's probably the best way.
Right on. Yeah. And as people have heard, you've got the Pass the Secret Sauce show as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really recommend. I can already tell it's going to be good if this is any indication of that. With that said, there's really only one thing left to do. Checking in with Jason here. Any yeah. Okay. So the grand finale, the big enchilada of the show, is an open-ended question that no one can get wrong. And we've yet to hear an answer that wasn't awesome, no matter where it comes from. And that is, if you could have invited anybody to this room today to hear your story, chime in on some of the stuff we were chewing on, who would you have loved to have had here, and why them?
I think I probably would say my dad, because, again, we obviously talked about him and what we had originally thought of doing, many, many years ago, and where I am now. I think that'd be a cool conversation. So.
Absolutely. What was your dad's name, by the way?
So everybody called him by his middle name. His first name was John. His middle name was Patrick. My middle name is Patrick, but everybody called him Pat. So everybody knew him by Pat.
I love that, man. I've met people who have the same first name, so they go by their middle name. So that, because I'm the third, it's I love it, man. Those relationships, we've got to treasure them, and we've just got to find a way to carry on the vision and the mission. And there's so much about your story that is just full of heart and clarity of purpose, real driven stuff. And the thing is, you never waited around, no matter what it was. And to this day, you're just moving.
Keep going. Yeah.
And that's what it is right there. But it's tradition on here for Jason to close us out. So I'm gonna let him do that. But I genuinely enjoyed this conversation, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Great conversation. I always love being on here with, super like-minded people. And because you know what, we only got 168 hours a week. So if we ain't surrounding ourselves with the people that we want to be around and that are going to expand our brain a little bit, even if it's just a little bit, right? It's just, life's too short. So you got to surround yourself with the people that are going to help you make a difference, or there's a connection or something. Something always leads to something. It's whether or not you decide to take the next step. That's the key right there. And, thanks for being on the show. It was a great, really good stuff and powerful story. And I just know that we appreciate it. And I'm sure our audience will too.
No, I appreciate the invitation. Many thanks.
All right, Matt. Cheers. Happy holidays.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.